In this life, if you are not enlightened, then you might as well be dead. All these lights and cameras just flashing, they just flash.
Welcome to the Prince Nana Show. Now here's your host, me, Prince Nana.
Got no time for games, it's just action. It's just action. And everything I do is with a passion.
Hey, welcome back to the show, all of my good friends out there. I'm so happy that you are joining me, all right, here on the Prince Nana Show faithfully, all right, listening to the podcast, going to the YouTube page, all right, the Prince Nana Show, all right, and you guys have been donating, all right, to keep the podcast alive, all right. Make sure that you donate, all right, to the link that I'll provide inside of this podcast somewhere, all right. But it's all appreciated. Prince Nana appreciates you guys, and I'm glad to be doing this here with you guys. But today, we have a good guest, all right, a great guest, somebody who has been in the pro wrestling business for many years, all right. He started way back, all right, way back in the 1970s, all right, and he was able to recreate himself so many times, all right, with so many different ring names, all right, over the years, all right. He ended up being a major, all right, booker for one of the biggest companies in the world at the time, WCW, all right, and he's a part of the cloth and the history of modern day professional wrestling. Ladies and gentlemen, today on my show, all right, a legend, all right, someone that you can learn from in and outside of the ring, all right, and we're also gonna try and get some really good understanding of some, maybe fake news that we had over the years, but we're gonna get all of that today in this interview. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up, all right, for the Grand Wizard, all right, the Taskmaster, all right, and among other names, all right, but you all may know him, all right, as Mr. Kevin Sullivan. Kevin, are you there?
Hey, my man. How are you?
Mr. Kevin Sullivan, how are you, my friend?
Good, my man. How are you, Nana?
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry about the technical difficulties getting you onto the line, but it's definitely an honor, my friend, to have you here on the Prince Nana Show. How are you? How have you been?
It's my honor to be on the Prince Nana. You must have been able to get anybody else.
Oh man, you know what? Trust me, I was going through my list of people, all right, and you were the one. You were the one that I had the hardest time getting on the phone. So right now, this is truly a blessing. How have you been doing with the whole COVID-19 pandemic going on in the world? Are you staying safe?
Yeah, well, you know where I live. I live in an island north of Seattle, and
Right.
till, up until Mother's Day, you couldn't come to any of the islands where I live unless you actually lived here, even if you had a second home. Like I saw they did that in Maine and they did it in the Cape Cod, and they actually did it where I used to live, the Florida Keys. So they opened up uh, Mother's Day and then Memorial Day weekend. There's a group of 7 islands here. They probably had over 100,000 tourists. So it's pretty remarkable that I've never seen anything like this. I don't think the people that are alive today have ever seen anything like this. I mean, to me,
Wow.
to me, I don't know. Every day I read about it, and every day there's a different twist on it. I'm not sure anybody really has a handle on it.
Right.
hopefully, we're past the point and we can start uh, seeing people again and feeling safe and not have to wear masks and gloves and all that.
Yeah, I know. I can imagine how, all of the athletes out there feel, because,
Yeah.
being a sports entertainer, they thrive off of like live audiences. Can you imagine a stadium with people sitting 6 feet apart?
No, and the other thing is, I thought about this. This is the problem because I saw Mike Trout, who I'm a huge baseball fan,
Right.
and I think he's next to Willie Mays. He's the greatest baseball player I think I've ever seen.
Wow.
And he said that he isn't coming back because he's going to have his wife's ready to have a baby, and until they, can tell him 100% that he's not going to get, carry it,
Right.
give it to his newborn and his wife. I mean, they're going to have a hard time getting uh, the baseball players back. I thought about what you said about the 3 feet away and stuff.
Right. The 6 feet
Okay,
apart.
okay. Think about this. Great idea. The seventh inning, we've all been drinking beer. Everybody's going to go take a leak. You're not 6 feet. You're not 6 feet away, right?
Right.
So I don't think it's. I don't even think it's possible to, under the circumstances, to bring it back. And then here in Trout, I don't think that a lot of the ball players want to come back. I saw NHL. There was a thing that said the NHL were coming back.
I did see that also. I did.
So are they coming back with no people in the stadium?
I think they wanted to try it out because I think one of the main companies that did try it out was UFC and obviously the WWE and now AEW. So a lot of companies are beginning to kind of like, think about doing empty arena events. But that would be pretty interesting. I don't know how feasible that would be because I never really thought, hockey and stuff like that gained high viewership on television. I don't know.
Yeah, even baseball. I mean, the crowd plays so much into it.
Right,
So,
right.
the fans that are passionate about baseball, especially in markets like Boston, New York, when they play one another. I mean, every pitch they're clinging on to. I don't know if it'll look like just a scrimmage game, and that will, I think, in the long run, hurt it.
Right,
Because the
right.
Turner.
I mean, it can. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, it can end up being, a negative thing, but we can, all we can do is just hope that
Right.
that we can go back to some kind of normalcy because we need to have, we need to have people going out, people experiencing one another, so on and so forth. Because, you started in the wrestling business back in 1970, all right? Who would
Right.
have known that now in 2020, all right, that things would be this way? When you debuted it back in the day in the 1970s, were you a fan? Were you a wrestling fan? Is that how you started in the business?
Well, it was a strange story. I was a wrestling fan as a kid because uh, Paul Bowser was the promoter in Boston area, but people don't. They should look him up. Paul Bowser at one time was the strongest promoter in the maybe the world. Bowser owned,
Bowser.
yeah, he owned part of Montreal. He sent his guys in to run Montreal. He sent his guys in to run Toronto.
Right.
He owned L.A. He placed the guy in San Francisco. He was partners with Hart was the guy's name. I'll think about it in a second.
Right.
In Ohio, he was a member of the NWA, but they allowed him to have his own world champion, And back in the day, there was two national promotions out of Chicago, meaning they both had national TV in the 50s, Fred Kohler and Schwartz.
Right.
And Schwartz's people used the AWA champion. And there's a great thing on YouTube, if the listeners want to tune it in, there was a double cross for the AWA belt where Don Eagle, who was a native of Canadian, indigenous native, he was
right. That's
and,
where his whole generation is from there.
Yeah, and the thing was, Gorgeous George double crossed him, and it's on YouTube, and you can watch it. It's a great thing to watch.
I'm gonna get that YouTube link from you.
And Paul Bowser, so he was very strong. So I was a fan, but I had wrestled amateur from the time I was 10, and I was working out at a place called the Boston YMCA Union. A guy came up to me, and he said, he was about 100, I was about 200 pounds, and he was about 180. He said, "You want to work out?" So I started working out with him, and we became friends. Lo and behold, he was from the Berry family in South Africa.
Wow.
And they were the largest diamond people in the world.
So you're telling me that this person that approached you and you started working out with, he ended up being like a family member for one of the gold mine owners in Africa?
Not gold mine, the diamond mine people.
Oh, wow.
So he said to me that he wanted more than anything to be a wrestler, but it was kind of beneath his station in life. And, the guy was an Arrow shirt. I don't know if people remember Arrow shirts, but they were the hot shirts back in the day. And he was a male model for them. He was also on soap operas. He was in commercials.
Right.
Graduated from Oxford first in England, and then Harvard Business School.
Oh, wow. Then this guy, his brains were just like unbelievably big.
Yeah. So he used to go work out, and he said, "I'll take you to a place that you can work out." It was 234 Williamsboro upstairs, the 234 off of Broadway. And up at the gym.
This is where Broadway, where in Manhattan?
No, in Brooklyn, in Williamsboro.
In Brooklyn, New York?
Yeah.
Wow. So you were running. You was in Brooklyn making all these moves?
No, I was in Boston, but I went to Brooklyn on weekends because the gym there. I was the only Anglo in the gym.
Wow.
The gym was ran by Marcel Rivera and Isaac Rosario, and Johnny Rods was in there.
Right.
Ramon Perez, Victor Rivera, Pedro would drop in occasionally.
Yes. Johnny used to always talk about you coming down, but I wasn't. Now that it's all coming back to me. Wow. Okay, so now I get it.
So that was only.
This is the beginning, almost like of your journey.
Yeah, so that was the only bit of training I had, and then he got me booked in Montreal, and that's how it happened.
Wow, that's big. I mean, looking at your career, and I'm somebody who, forget it. I was introduced to you from WCW, all right, the Tree of Woe, all right. You were running across the ring and you were slamming your knee into people's faces. It was so good, all right. But when you were in the the territories, if you will, all right, you started at, like, let's say CWF, and then you went to International Championship Wrestling, where you did the Prince of Darkness deal with Woman. What was the final jump, all right, between going from like the ICW days and the CWF days to the Jim Crockett WCW days. How did how did that come about? That first jump? Because,
Well,
obviously going to work for Jim Crockett was
yeah,
a big thing, all right?
yeah. But I had been Dusty's assistant booker, so Dusty
Right.
was kind to me, and when Crockett bought out Florida, I was actually booking in Florida, and Dusty brought me up to be his assistant along with JJ's
Wow.
assistant. So I was lucky there.
Wow,
So
rest in peace, Dusty. How was it working with Dusty at that time? I know you worked with all the greats, but how was it working underneath Dusty Rhodes at the time when he was booking?
Dusty and I had a great relationship because I had wrestled him every night for practically 2.5 years in some kind of
Wow.
capacity, in a single match or with Barry and me and Mark Lewin, or a 6-man tag or something. But Dusty is working for him as when he was a booker. Dusty was a genius.
Oh,
He
he
really
definitely
was.
was. He definitely,
And,
definitely was.
and he was smart enough to know. Here's the thing about geniuses that there's been very few that I've seen in the wrestling business, but very few of them. The creative people are not the best in the world of being organized.
Right, right, right,
You know,
right.
because
Organization.
yeah, so they're having all kinds of ideas coming through them and they're writing. But J.J. Dillon was a tremendous factor for Dusty's success because J.J. would organize Dusty's thoughts. He would keep Dusty's ledgers perfect. And J.J. was a very smart guy himself.
Right.
I don't think J.J. gets the credit he deserves.
Mr. Dillon.
Uh, uh,
You're
one
talking
of
about Mr. J.J. Dillon.
right.
Right.
I have had so much respect for JJ, and it grew on me because I was in the Florida office. He was the assistant booker there, and I wasn't. I wasn't just wrestling, and JJ was very good at keeping everything running smooth. JJ's a college graduate. He was a teacher,
Right.
and I was a JJ and I laugh about this. I saw JJ as a special referee, not as a special referee. He came in to referee a match in the Boston Guys that I saw. It was Bruno against Killer Kowalski.
Oh man.
And they actually, the match that he did, JJ, they had a series of 3 matches, and that's all. That's usually the only thing you get with Bruno. You don't go any further.
Right. Right.
They had a deal where Kowalski picked up a chair and threw it at Bruno. Bruno ducked it, hit JJ.
Ow.
And there was supposed to be, no count out, nothing like that. But it filled the ring up with guys, and they came back for a 4th match.
Oh my.
So,
God.
yes, JJ, and again, JJ was very instrumental in the WWF. He was very instrumental in WCW.
Right. Right.
And a lot of people don't know this. JJ was a very good hand as a wrestler. He drew a lot of money in Amarillo for the Funks when there was territories. He drew money in the maritime provinces, up in Canada, Nova
Right.
Scotia.
Right. In the Canadian areas.
Yeah, so he was very, very good. He
That,
was very good.
it's unfortunate, and this is a question I probably should ask you later on in the conversation. But why do you think guys like and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong? Did he ever worked for Vince McMahon? You know, like, because there's guys like you. I always wonder,
Yeah, he
how
worked.
come, guys like you never worked? You worked for Vince, but it wasn't in a long time situation. Like, how come these such talented guys like you and Mr. J.J.
Well,
Dillon?
JJ worked for Vince. He was very influential. He was in the head of talent relations and payoffs for a while.
Oh,
JJ,
wow, I didn't know that.
for years. I think he was here 7 or 8 years. And so he worked, like I said before, he was JJ's assistant.
Right.
He was also, JJ was assistant for Dusty. He was also Dusty's assistant in Carolina, so from Florida to Carolinas. And then JJ eventually got a chance to go to the Maritimes, and he actually booked the Maritimes for a summer, and he did well. So he's been a
He's a staple. He's a staple
kind
in what he did for
Yeah.
the industry. And maybe, I wish guys like him would be inducted into something like the WWE Hall of Fame.
Oh, he is. He is.
He
He's
is?
Yes, as a member of the Four Horsemen. Yes.
Oh my gosh. I met JJ back at ECWA with Jim Kettner. What a great guy. What
Yes.
a great guy. He gave
Yeah.
everyone advice. He spoke to everybody, and there's nothing but good things that I have to say about that. Do you know Jim Kettner?
No, I don't.
Oh, yeah. He's a great local promoter out in the East Coast over here who did many good things like you did as a booker when you were in WCW. How do you feel when people say that you booked an angle where you ended up at the time getting your wife at the time, all right, Nancy, taken from you from Christian White?
Yeah. They don't. Maybe they don't need to know, but that's was my personal life. We were separated. She was living in Daytona, and I was living in the Florida Keys.
Right. You guys had a great, great, great angle in professional wrestling.
Yeah, but here's the thing: like everything else in life,
right,
we weren't the only ones ever to get divorced. So
right, that's everything.
That's where we were heading. We were having problems. That doesn't mean she was wrong or I was wrong. It was just one of those things that people grow apart, and that's what happened to us.
Right. Right, and I can definitely respect that. But you know what just gets under my skin? Because you are a good friend of mine, all right? When I hear people, I watch that stupid, that show, all right? Dark Side
Right.
of the Ring. And they're talking about different things about the reason why you broke up was abuse and this and that. Where did that come from?
I don't know. The only abuse that was ever... She got arrested for stabbing me and spent 3 days in jail, and that's when I left.
Right,
so,
right.
I wish no ill upon her family. They were friends of mine. That's why I kept quiet. That's why. So that's in the past. So
right. It's done and gone. When you finally when WCW was finally bought, right?
Right.
Why weren't you a part of the transition?
Because I had a contract with Turner, not WCW.
Oh, and your contract was still standing
For
at
3
the
years. I had just signed a contract a few months before. I think it was. I had a 3-year contract, and I had 34 months to go, or almost 35 months to go. So that was 3 years. So
right.
I wasn't going to give up that money.
Did you still have any type of will or aspirations to work with a big company like WWE? Because the last time I saw you, I know you were doing some good stuff with
with Ring of Honor, and I know you still do some independence. Are you active as at all? And would you do?
Once in a while, I go to conventions, but I mean, I think they're doing a magnificent job, and I think that Ring of Honor, AEW, Vince. I think that they need to
Come
maybe
on, let it out, Kevin. All right,
no, yeah, they may,
let it out. I know you. All right, you have a very. I know you have a very specific feeling about the culture of the wrestling business right now.
well.
Let us know how you feel about all these companies, Kevin. Come on.
Here's what I think about all the companies. I think that Ring of Honor has three guys that are right up there. They're the best workers I've ever seen. Jay Lethal and the Briscoes.
Right. You're
And
absolutely right.
I'm probably missing some guys because I haven't been there in a long time. They had Steve Corino, who I think is very, very smart.
Very.
They didn't utilize him right. They should have listened to him. I think that the wrestling business, AEW has gave them an alternative to Vince. I think the kids, the athletes, are much better than they were in my generation. I just would like to see. Maybe it's because I was a heel. I would like to see. I like that MJF.
Oh, I love him. I love MJF.
I really like him.
And he's a New Yorker also. I think he's from Brooklyn, so he has that. I think Brooklyn or Long Island, one of the two.
I really like him. I would like to see. Back in the day, Eddie Graham would have had him the whole time and made sure, because that kid's money. And a lot of those, I mean, you got Jericho, you got the Rhodes brothers. And here's the other thing. I know all the spotlight's on Cody, but nobody gives Dustin his due either. Dustin has, at this time of his life, to me, he's given the best performances of all times.
Oh yeah, we've seen so many faces of Dustin, and such a genuine individual as well, just like his father. You know,
he was saddled with a gimmick that worked for the time. You can't knock it; it drew money, but it was that time.
Right.
And now he's reinvented himself in his matches. To me, when I watch them,
very smooth.
Yeah, and there's no holes in his work.
Right.
I think, that we've gone. I don't want to say too far with the comedy, because there's always been a place for comedy in wrestling.
Right.
But I think sometimes if you do we'll say a heavy heat angle with the comic guy, it shocks people. When your guy comes out as a comedic wrestler, after a while the shtick, no matter what, gets a little old.
And that's interesting to hear from somebody like you.
I think once in a while they need to have somebody that's a comedic. I'll give you an example. It's like Robin Williams, right?
Right.
He was one of the greatest comedians of all times. But where he really shone in the movies, when he played a heel, like the one where he was the guy that did the pictures, the 24-hour photos. I can't remember that name, but he was also in Insomnia.
Oh, I remember that movie you're talking about with the pictures and stuff. I forget the name of it.
Yeah, and he played it in another one where there was a chip in people's heads for their life, and he altered the chip. I mean, he was really great as a heel.
Right.
I mean, I think sometimes if you could take, and this is no disrespect to these guys, because some of them are brilliant wrestlers. I mean, Colt Cabana technically is as good as anybody in the world.
Right.
I often thought if you did a serious angle with Colt, it would blow. It would draw big because people wouldn't expect it. Sometimes you got to shake the tree and make things fall out.
Absolutely. I definitely would like to see something like that as well. I mean, I don't know if that has anything to do with the style of wrestling, because, there's been times where I've seen, Colt's matches, and I'm just using him as an example, but I've seen his matches start out, comedic and then end up very serious. I'm talking about with blood and everything else.
Yeah, he has great psychology.
He does. So it's like for someone like him, it's kind of weird to use that, but at the same time, I can see what you're talking about when you say like the shtick. Like it's like, okay, we saw this, we're seeing this, I don't know. Maybe in my point of view, I just don't feel that the fight is there like it used to be. It seems like it's more focused on like the glitz and the glamour. You think?
Yeah, and I tell you the thing, it's divided, just like this country's divided. I mean, we're so
God, it's sickening.
Okay,
it's sickening.
But the other thing is, if you listen to Jimmy Cornette, who's a personal friend of mine, one of my favorites, Brian Last said something. I listened to Jimmy's podcast the other day, and Brian Last said, AEW it was either people loved their last pay-per-view or hated their last pay-per-view.
Right.
And I said, the ones that loved it were millennials and a little bit older that grew up playing video games.
Right.
So wrestling has to evolve. It has become like a human video game.
Right.
And it's people say, well, they're not selling anything. Well, I'll give you this example. Again, I'm going to give a baseball analogy. Mm-hmm. In baseball, there's the major league team, like the Red Sox, and then they have the Pawtucket Red Sox, which is AAA, right below, and then they have the Greenville Red Sox,
right?
Then the Portland Red Sox. The Portland Red Sox are young guys, 17 years old. Well, if we did away with everyone but the Portland Red Sox, after 10 years, you and I could be at the Red Sox Yankee game, and we say, hey, that kid's not bad at second base. He's only made 3 errors today.
Right.
So it's all what you grow up with. It's all what you know. So, I mean, every generation thinks their generation before, was the best.
You're right.
The one after them, they don't know what they're doing. Well, they do know what they're doing because they're making a hell of a lot of money.
And a heck of a lot more than a lot of the generations before where guys should have been making money also because they were laying down the foundation. But I guess that's the way the world works sometimes. Hey, who are some of your I mean, I know you just said MJF, all right?
Yeah.
Who are some of your favorites right now? Who do you think is going to turn heads after this quarantine is over and 2021 starts up?
Here's the great thing about wrestling. You never know. There's a bunch of kids out there right now that we barely know their names. They're going to come to the forefront. I mean, the thing about wrestling is every generation has a giant star or two.
Right.
Yeah, back in the day, we'll go, Jack Briscoe was the main man in Florida. Then when Jack became champion, people said, oh, how are they going to continue? Then along comes the American dream.
Right.
Okay. We have Bruno in New York. Bruno gets ready to go. We have Backlund, and then we get Hulk Hogan. There's always somebody ready to break out. And I mean, we could do the same thing with WWE. When after Hogan, they didn't think we could draw. Then there was the Austin and The Rock. So there's somebody out there that's going to come through that we don't even know who it is, and
they're coming.
They're coming.
They're coming. That's all. That's all we should know. All right, is that they're coming. You know, I know you have to go. All right, soon. I have like 2 more questions for you, and then I'm actually gonna go get my back stepped on this morning. All right, I'm getting my back stepped on, so it's gonna be a good day. All right. What you have any plans for the day?
Yeah, I'm gonna work out, and then I'm gonna.
That's one thing about you, Kevin. That's one thing about you. Every time I've seen you throughout the years, you've always had a solid, tight frame. You've always been healthy looking. What advice can you give, all right, to any of these young girls and guys and referees and managers and promoters and bookers, all right, that are trying to change the wrestling business the way you did back in the day and get into the business and be successful?
Well, you got to give it like anything else in life. You got to give it 100%, and don't let people tell you can't do it, because who knows? I'm sure they told The Rock that. I'm sure they told Hogan that. Well, they did tell Hogan that. They broke his leg. Don't take no for an answer, and just keep on keeping on.
Wow, that's some of the greatest advice that anybody that's listening can get from my good friend Kevin Sullivan. Kevin, how can fans, how can promoters, all right, how can any of these companies contact you if they need you back in these offices or back on camera or in the convention or at a show? How can they get in contact with you?
Let them get in contact with me from you. If I can't get
you had it first, my friends, all right?
Okay.
We might have Kevin in the embassy. Kevin, thank you so much for stopping by. I'm going to text you and get that link that you were talking about, all right, in regard to that match, all right?
Yes.
And I thank you so much, big brother. Love you, and you're always welcome onto the show.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
Thank you, baby.
Thanks for joining me for another episode. I'll see you later, fools.
Then you might as well